Finally, I could finally play the Way of the Samurai 2 game. And not have any other bullshit. Ain't that right, Head of the Mandalorian?
That's not my name.
Ah, come on, Mandalorian. You know you gotta think that joke's old.
I keep telling you, it's not a joke. My name, not that.
Yeah, if you ever told me.
It's Boba Fett.
Doesn't matter. Let's just turn it on. What the hell? Dude, did you put this on?
Why would I do that?
Fair enough. But let's see what it actually is. It does look interesting. Oh, okay. Magical bullshit and, oh. Son of a...
If you haven't by now figured out that I have very mixed theories about this entire series, I don't know what's wrong with you, but in any case, whether or not you like it, it's up to you. To me, it just shows a sad decline of the creator that I just love. Rumiko's work is fine, it's just after Inuyasha. Well, it's actually more accurate to say that once she wrote Inuyasha, she never stopped. To this day, it is her most well-known work, only behind Ranma and a Half. And I think it's a good series, go read it. It should be noted that I don't hate Inuyasha, just the annoying reuse of its own material to an obnoxious degree. Let me explain. I like comedy. It's not a genre I'm always down for, but when I'm into it, it's really good. But I know at least one thing about comedy. Don't throw the same joke too often, because when you do that, you make the joke boring and dull and lifeless. Here's an example. Moroku is a perverted monk. That is the joke. He does something perverted. That's it. I know it's a cultural thing, and look, I can find these funny every so often, but come on. You just can't make it the be-all, end-all of a joke. It just gets annoying. Though I need to also mention something when I'm talking about comedy here. It also had a lot of filler, just so much filler, and thus they repeat the same stuff over and over again, and I stopped watching the anime when the 7 demon guys awakened due to some filler bullshit, and it was dull filler, if anything, just telling it. And I don't mind filler. I mean, One Piece has like the metric fuck ton of filler, but at least some of it is good, while most of this stuff is just eh. So you may be asking yourself, what was the entire point of that? Very simple. It would allow me to explain why I don't like this game at all. And I apologize, but this video took priority for 4 reasons. First reason was because I really wanted to talk about Inuyasha since the Yashahime trailer came out and made me want to use this as a way of condensing all my thoughts about that series into one video that could help out a lot. Second reason I had was to make this video, because I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but never had much of a care to do it, and the trailer kind of pushed me to do this. Since I was also doing a Japanese thing month, where I talk about Japanese games of this era, you know what I mean, like the feudal era, you know what I mean, and have fun with that. Third off, and this one's kind of important for me, Inuyasha was my second well-done video. I mean, highest viewed. And sometimes you just gotta play the algorithm. And fourth, this one really pushed me to furthest and made this possible. It just sucked. Oh god, it just sucked. I had to talk about only a small part of it, only because I couldn't stand to play more of it. I really couldn't finish it. But it's time to actually do this. So this is Inuyasha, The Secret of the Cursed Mask. Why is it always secret, inner, or curse? I need to say this now. This game is not entirely a lazy license game. It just mostly is. But you gotta say something, as there is a character selection between a boy and a girl. Sure, it doesn't matter, but it's at least nice to have that sort of choice. I chose the girl because, well, target group of this area, and I at least gotta praise one thing. They actually got the animation team to make this sort of animated sequence for this game for some reason, and that's praiseworthy enough. And that's where all my praises stop. Mostly. So we are Kururugi, this kid here. Because our name means nothing, because you can't give them one, but it doesn't really ever matter. The kid is coming from school because That's always something we always gotta do. Heading to the local shrine, because that's where our family lives. God, there are a lot of shrines in this series. So whatever, we go to the storehouse because there's a festival going on, because yada yada yada, it's tied to the plot. Don't worry. And somehow that involves us going back in time somehow. That always happens. She apparently runs around for a little bit. She finds some locals who call her a demon and try to capture her for some reason.
I'm pretty sure she's human by the looks of her. What the hell, game?
Doesn't matter. She runs away from them as she actually just comes up to a demon that tries to eat her. Do demons actually ever bother trying to eat other people? I mean, like, I know that happens in the show, but not often. She then uses her special protagonist powers to just kill the demon as she just faints, because that's always how it works. And she's awakened by Inuyasha himself and, wait, what are you doing here? Like, they don't ever explain what he's doing here. And then he just tells us to follow him, and we do, and yeah. Side noting here, this is where the combat begins, but I'm gonna hold that off until we get a more full team. So, we're clear on that. We go to Kaede's village, and, side noting again, I know, a lot of side noting. Does it actually have a name? Like, seriously here. Apologies, let's continue on. We actually meet Kagome and Shippo at the entrance as they are confused with us being here, and we kind of explain what happened. As they just the dead bone well, and that doesn't work well as we just then rust the night, because what else to do? And this is where we begin the friendship mechanic, and it's an oddball to say the least. This mechanic basically just says, at night we could spend time with a character and grow closer to them. And I have no idea of its real effects, because the only thing it affects is the ending, and I'll talk about that later because I want to talk about a particular ending-ish, but later. Now, this is where I actually gotta start talking about the bullshit. So, okay, after everything I just told you, where do you go? And I mean, like, I want you to guess how you progress. Well, for whatever reason, the devs decided to make you have to talk to everyone in town, I think. Because of how this game is structured, it's hard at times to tell what the game wants you to do or what it needs you to do. Because it says talk to everyone, but that's a clear, very deep issue, where you might not be able to notice this one guy over there because they all look the same. More examples of the game just halting progression and just not letting you do stuff. For example, dungeons not opening up to talk to the certain person and going inside places that you didn't think you could. Because again, how this is made just doesn't look like you could go in there. I'll talk about that area later, but trust me, I have a good reason when I talk about it. Whatever, after talking to everyone in town, you can actually progress. And this is where the combat will begin, because now you actually have Shippo and Kagome in your team now. And I gotta say one thing about the combat. It is slow and dull.
Now, I like JRPGs, favorite genre of all time. But this game was just so bad, I could barely even finish.
Come on, the game can't be that bad. I mean, come on. The combat can't be that awful.
And that is actually the most fucked up part. It's not. It's not even the gameplay's fault. Entirely.
Before beginning combat, you can wander around the map, and I'll talk about that later because trust me, that needs to be talked about. You'll see these puffs of smoke everywhere, and you can wander into them to get into combat. Sort of. It only raises the chance of getting into a random encounter. Yeah, there's still random encounters in this game, it just doesn't tell you, or at least makes it apparent that's how it works. Combat is your standard affair turn-based RPG with this thing telling your turn order, which I would have been fine with if it actually had anything to tell you about the combat, because this thing can be random at times, because one time a character can be faster than another character, and sometimes they'll be dead last for no reason. And it really is confusing, to say the least. What's also odd about this RPG is that you don't have any skills at the beginning. And you might be wondering, what are you talking about? Remember when I said that in the DS game that you had all the abilities unlocked already, thus meaning no new skills were given to the player? In this one, you don't have any skills at all until way later, which is really confusing because you think they would have some of these skills by now. I mean, sure, some of them don't give them immediately, but some. I'm just confused, that's all. There's also the SP system, which the game won't explain until like way after you actually understand how it works, which is confusing to say the least. Actually, speaking of the SP system, let's actually talk about it. So some of your moves actually requires a spear at the bottom, so you can use stronger moves like healing, buffing, stronger finishers, whatnot. It's a little far more balanced than the original DS game, so to get a spear you either have to take or give damage, or heal because that builds it up too, and it can take a bit to refill, but it's helpful because the player can use these whenever they want, and some skills don't even require any SP, thus meaning they could use those instead. However, the player is more likely to use those skills that have zero cost because they have zero cost. Thus meaning, why would they use these harder, powerful moves, but if it's going to take a while just to get them back? Just wait until their boss battles are happening. And I wish that would have been the bigger issue, but it's not.
So what's the game's biggest issue then? It's so slow.
Oh my god, the game's so slow. And in both ways, just to be clear. Not only does the game slow down for no good reason at times, but the animations are slow as hell too. Seriously, by making all the animation take so long, it makes the player not want to give a dang about what's going on in the environment or what's happening in the gameplay to begin with. What's worse about the combat is that it's not interesting either. Sure, the concept is interesting, but when the game is actually playing, it's not really that enjoyable. The game's leveling system is a bit odd, as leveling doesn't actually feel important due to not really changing anything except maybe getting new moves, and at times that still doesn't make it really interesting because the choices don't matter. The ultimate worst part is that there's no real challenge. Anything really doesn't really ever challenge you at all. The game doesn't ramp up at all except maybe with bosses, but that's only because they have higher stats and more HP. That's it. It doesn't really make it interesting, just hard. I should at least try to praise something, as there was an idea that I did like. The co-op moves. This is where two members use a move that combines into a hard-hitting move, which is interesting as they're also animated. That's really interesting. Something else I should have mentioned before, that this game is fully voice acted. Everyone reprised their roles just to voice lines. And most of the lines are voiced, except every NPC, but you know what I mean, the normal NPCs. Everyone else, fully voiced, which is nice to say the least. Though, strangely enough, this is slow too, thus making it a little uninteresting, and I just wanted it to end.
Here's a clip that kind of just generalizes my view in the end. Just end! 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 Yeah, and that should really never be even possible. But this game did it.
Let's talk about the graphics, and I hate to be that guy, but this game looks like a PS1 game that got ported and slightly more polished up for the PS2, which is not bad looking still, but it's kind of lazy as the background is just literal artwork, just plastered everywhere and repeated for multiple times, because that's useful. But what's worse is that they are designed in such a way that you're blocked by the path. You cannot see the path at times. I mean, like, look at this map for a moment. Can you tell me how I'm supposed to progress? You would think I would have to go down, but no, that's not the right way. You need to go over there, and that's just weird. To say the design of the game is just obnoxious is not an understatement, but not an outright lie. Because on multiple occasions, the game will outright just waste your time. For example, after being captured by this guy over here, you escape, and then you plan to turn yourself in because of Naraku doing some weird shit over here, and you want to see what the hell he's doing. But when you actually try to turn yourself in, you guys run away for some reason, for no actual reason. Then, they for some strange reason, make up a new plan that still requires the same thing, and it's still just so stupid. It's like, why not cut the middleman and just do that instead? The game does not really care and will waste your time constantly, and I'm repeating that because it does it on multiple occasions. For example, the Kohaku and Moroku plot lines don't do anything. They don't matter. In fact, they just happen and had happened before, so it's just repeating things that already happened beforehand, and it's just irritating to no end. Like, how do you do that and not make it interesting? Seriously. What's worse is that the only character I actually gave a ding about was the protagonist, because they were something new and allowed for new situations. But ironically, she's too dull by being the nice girl who sees what's up with everyone, and that's no fun. Actually, speaking of the main protagonist, I need to mention her thing and what she does in combat. She basically uses magic, or shikigami in this case, and it's really interesting, but I give little care because it's sort of this Deus Ex Machina power the game gives her at times, just because it needs to move the plot forward in some way, and it's not really that interesting. Something I forgot to mention here, in the town where those locals were trying to capture her when she originally came to this town, we actually find a character who was wearing a mask and was a monk. And that's where it came to me, and this is where I literally screamed in agony because I had just realized something.
Now this next one really got to me because I didn't see it coming. It's the literal same plot. Same kind of ideas, same kind of events, same story beats, whatnot. And it kind of really does show the laziness of this entire game series when you start thinking about it. Reuse the plots of your reuse ideas of reused characters for reused jokes.
So for fun here, I'm gonna just go over the list of things that made me on multiple occasions made me want to leave the game because I just didn't want to play. The first one was where that little trail thing happened. That was like fun. The Kaede thing that happened. I hated that. The Moroku plot point thing was annoying just because it took a while and really didn't add anything to the plot, thus meaning it was legit wasting your time. There was that. The next one was the castle, where you couldn't enter unless you did these specific bullshit things before entering, and you needed to do this for whatever reason. But what really actually made me really stop was almost, and again I say this almost, was basically the game gave you this side activity, but it didn't paint it as though it was a side activity, but an actual thing you needed to do, which actually scared the ever-loving fuck out of me because I didn't want to do it at all. Luckily, you don't have to do it because thank God I didn't, because that would have been annoying. But also, and this one just okay, there was a weird bug in this castle. For some strange reason, in this area, you could actually get bugged out and just freeze. For some reason. No idea why, and the game did this to me once, and I didn't know until I actually looked it up. Cause that's just fun. I should get back to the pod because this is where the pod kinda kicked back up again. So Naraku's here actually, and he tells us he was the one who sent us back here because reasons, and kinda weird, and I'm not sure how it particularly works. It's stupid, but we can't actually do anything to Naraku, so we're forced to leave, and ironically enough, this is where I stopped because I had just lost all hope, because like, this was the point. Nothing like everything happening before. No, it was this. Just after this, I just gave up, and that just gets a laugh out of me. So for now, I'm going to try to actually now just summarize everything I can, and if it does feel a little compact or a little too long, I'm sorry. So we somehow gotta go up a mountain just to get through Naraku's barrier that was causing us issues earlier. We do that, then come back, Naraku's gone, cause that's always happened. Naraku's always in another fucking castle. On our way of trying to find Naraku's castle, we find the wolf demons are injured, but they won't let us near them since they think the MC did it. As you know where this is going, we find out that the one under the mask, it looks exactly like Kurugi, whose name is Usugi, just to be clear. We fight them for a bit, then they get separated for some strange reason. Kagura thinks we're Usugi for some reason. Yeah, get your head around that. From this thing, we learned that Naraku's after Rin for some reason, trying to get Shishomaru pissed off again, because that's just something he does. Anyway, Rin gets captured, and you know where this is leading to. But because of this, I need to talk about the multiple endings of this game now. Well, it's actually more accurate to call it one ending with slight variance. See, depending on who you befriend at the end, you get a certain ending with whoever highest you got in that friendship. I tried to get the Shishomaru ending, which is a bit harder because you gotta do a bunch of other things just to get it, and it's not worth it in all honesty. When recording this, I originally had a little more to say about everything, but I just decided to say, screw that, there's nothing more to talk about. It's just not needed. I already know how it's going to end, you know how it's going to end, so why bother? You know, when I was writing this script entirely, to show you how bored I was going to make up something up, but here's something I actually did when I was bored by this game. So, when I was actually recording for this, and, this just sort of happened, I was going to try to say and explain how bored I was with this game, but it then came to me how bored I was. It was so boring, I read a fanfic novel. Yes, I'm being not joking here. The sequel to this, unironically. Because that was far more interesting than whatever the fuck this thing was. It had its flaws, but it was still interesting if anything.
So, in the end, is this game bad? Yes. But is it as bad as the DS game? Well, they're both bad, but for the entirely different reasons. While the DS gameplay is boring and dull, it's really quick and to the point sometimes. Still slow, but you know what I mean, gets to it more often. While the PSP game is just so slow that everything takes so long that you're still just waiting for the thing to just fucking end and get on with it. Next time for real, Way of the Samurai 2. Until next time.